The stars looked the same as always through the bridge windows of the UES Ranger. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair, reading reports that seemed to blend together after 3 months in deep space. Another failed mining survey. Another empty planet. Another waste of time and fuel. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Lisa Carter from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. "It's not like anything in our database." Jake looked up from his tablet. Lisa was their best communications officer, and she didn't get excited about normal space chatter. "What kind of strange?" "A distress signal, but the pattern is complex. Really complex. Like someone is trying to solve math problems while they're dying." Lisa's face showed confusion and worry. "The signal is getting weaker every hour." Commander Pete Williams stepped closer to Lisa's station. He was Jake's second in command and always worried about following Earth command rules. Could be a trap. Pirates sometimes use fake distress calls to lure ships. Jake stood up and walked to the main screen. The signal looked like waves of light that danced in patterns. It was beautiful, but also sad somehow. "How far away is the source?" 2 days at full speed, Lisa said. "But Captain, I don't think this is from pirates. The math in this signal is too advanced. It would take our best computers years to create something like this." "We should report it to Earth Command and wait for orders," Pete said. His voice was firm, but Jake could hear the doubt underneath. Jake studied the pattern on the screen. Something about it reminded him of music, but music filled with pain. "How long before the signal completely fades?" Lisa checked her readings. "At the current rate, maybe 36 hours. It's probably less." "That's not enough time to contact Earth and get orders back," Jake said. He made his decision quickly. Set course for the signal. Maximum speed. Pete's face showed surprise. "Captain, we don't have permission to investigate unknown signals. What if it's dangerous?" "Then we'll deal with it," Jake said. "Lisa, keep working on that signal. Want to know what we're flying into." For the next 2 days, Lisa barely left her station. She worked with Dr. Amy Rodriguez, their science officer, to break down the signal piece by piece. Amy was good with languages and had helped them talk to 3 different alien species during their mission. "I'm getting fragments," Lisa announced on the second day. "Words, I think. But the language is old. Really old." "How old?" Lay asked. Amy looked up from her work. "If I'm right, this language has roots that go back thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands. It's like finding someone who speaks the first human language ever created." "What are the fragments saying?" Pete asked. He'd been pacing the bridge for hours. Lisa's voice became quiet. "Ancient mother, young ones trapped. Crystal death spreads. We fall." The bridge became silent. Everyone understood that they were hearing someone's last words. Someone who was watching their children die and couldn't stop it. "There's more," Lisa continued. "Something about guardians failing and hope fading." "Captain, whoever sent this signal has been fighting something for a long time, and they're losing." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "How much longer until we reach the source?" 6 hours, said Danny Walsh from the pilot station. Danny was young, but flew their ship better than anyone Jake had ever seen. "All right, everyone, get some rest. We don't know what we're going to find, but it sounds like someone needs help badly." 6 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace near a green and blue planet. It looked peaceful from space, with white clouds and vast oceans. But their sensors immediately picked up energy readings that made no sense. "Captain, you need to see this," Amy said from her science station. "There's a life form on the surface. It's massive. Really massive." The main screen showed a heat signature that looked like it covered several square miles. The creature was warm-blooded and definitely alive, but it was larger than anything they had ever encountered. "Could the sensors be wrong?" Pete asked. "Ran the scan 3 times, Amy replied. "Whatever is down there is about 2 kilometers long and maybe half a kilometer wide. It's breathing, and its heart is beating, but very slowly. The signal is coming from directly below us," Lisa added. "From that creature." Jake stared at the readings. "Take us down. Carefully. If that thing is intelligent enough to send complex math signals, it might not like visitors. As the Ranger descended through the atmosphere, they got their first real look at the source of the distress signal. In a valley surrounded by purple mountains lay the largest living thing any of them had ever seen. It looked like a dragon from old Earth stories. But bigger than the biggest buildings back home, its scales were dark green, but they looked dull and faded. Great wings stretched out from its body, and they could see old scars and fresh wounds covering its hide. The creature's massive head was raised toward the sky, and even from their ship, they could see the intelligence in its golden eyes. "My God," Amy whispered. "It's beautiful." The dragon turned its enormous head toward their ship as they landed a safe distance away. It didn't attack or try to flee. Instead, it made a sound that shook the ground and rattled their ship. The sound was filled with such sadness that several crew members felt tears in their eyes. "It's trying to communicate," Lisa said, working frantically at her station. "The same mathematical patterns as the distress signal, but stronger now that we're close." Jake made another quick decision. "Amy, Lisa, you're with me? We're going to try to make contact. Pete, keep the ship ready for a quick takeoff."
"Captain."
"That thing could step on you without noticing," Pete warned. "Maybe, but something that intelligent wouldn't send a distress signal just to eat whoever answered." Jake hoped he was right. The three humans walked slowly toward the massive dragon. With each step, they felt smaller and more fragile. The creature watched them approach with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge and pain. When they were close enough to touch the dragon's scales, it lowered its great head until it was only a few feet away from them. Jake could feel the warmth from its breath and smell, something like flowers and lightning. Amy pulled out her translation device and began recording the sounds the dragon made. Lisa used her equipment to analyze the mathematical patterns it created by moving its claws in the dirt. After an hour of careful work, they managed their first real communication. Ancient Amy said, reading from her device. She's saying she's ancient. Her name is something like Zarathic. She's been alive for thousands of years. The dragon made more sounds, and its golden eyes showed desperate hope. "Young ones," Lisa translated. "Her young ones are trapped. She can't save them. The crystal death has them." Zarathic used one of her massive claws to point toward a distant hillside. Even from miles away, they could see strange crystal formations that sparkled in the sunlight. But the sparkles looked wrong somehow, like broken glass covered in blood. "She wants us to follow her," Amy said. "She wants to show us something." Looked up at the enormous dragon and nodded. Zarathic made a sound that might have been relief, then began moving toward the crystal hillside. Each of her steps shook the ground, but she moved carefully, making sure the tiny humans could keep up as they walked. Jake realized they were no longer just exploring space. They had become part of something much bigger and more important than any mission Earth Command had ever given them. The walk to the crystal hillside took 3 hours. Zarathic moved slowly so the humans could keep up, but even her careful steps made the ground shake. Jake Morrison watched the massive dragon ahead of them and wondered what they were about. To see Dr. Amy Rodriguez carried her medical scanner and sample containers. She had never studied anything like Zarathic before, and every reading from her equipment showed impossible things. The dragon's body temperature was perfect for her. Size her heart beat once every 30 seconds, but each beat pumped enough blood to fill a swimming pool. Most amazing of all, her brain activity showed intelligence levels that matched or exceeded human genius. Captain Amy said as they walked, "Her cellular structure is unlike anything we know. Her scales aren't just armor. They're like tiny solar panels that collect energy from sunlight and starlight. She's basically a living power plant." Lieutenant Lisa Carter stayed busy with her communication equipment. Every few minutes, Zarathic would make sounds or draw symbols in the dirt with her claws. Lisa was building a basic translation system, word by word. "She keeps mentioning something called the Valenary," Lisa said. "I think that's what she calls the crystal death. And she's talking about her children. 12 of them." Jake felt his stomach tighten. 12 young dragons trapped by something their incredibly powerful mother couldn't fight. What kind of enemy could do that? As they got closer to the hillside, the crystal formations became clearer. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. The crystals grew in perfect mathematical patterns, creating structures that looked like frozen music. But inside each crystal formation, Jake could see shadows that moved slowly, like something alive was trapped inside. "Those aren't just crystals," Amy said, reading her scanner. "There's life inside them. Powerful life. The energy readings are off the charts." Zarathek stopped walking and made a sound that was part roar and part sob. She pointed with one massive claw at 12 crystal cocoons arranged in a circle. Each cocoon was about the size of a small building and pulsed with faint light. Translation equipment picked up more words. "My babies. My little ones. Crystal killers took them. I cannot break the shells. I cannot save them." Jake walked closer to one of the crystal cocoons. Through the clear crystal walls, he could see something large and golden inside. It moved slightly, like it was breathing, but very slowly. "Amy, what are we looking at?" Dr. Rodriguez ran her scanner over the crystal surface. "The crystal is alive too, Captain. It's not just a shell, some kind of organism that feeds on energy, and whatever is inside these cocoons has enormous amounts of energy. The young dragons? That would be my guess. The crystals are slowly draining their life force. Like parasites." Zarathek made more sounds, and Lisa translated quickly. "She says the crystal killers, the Valinari, came from deep space 6 months ago. They attacked her children while they were sleeping. She fought them, but every time she destroyed some crystals, more grew back stronger." Jake walked around the circle of crystal cocoons. In the center, he saw something that made his blood run cold. There were pieces of crystal that looked like they had been melted and broken. Scorch marks on the ground showed where Zarathek had used her fire breath. Claw marks in the stone showed where she had tried to tear the crystals apart with her massive strength. "She's been fighting for 6 months, Jake said quietly. "Look at all this damage. She's tried everything." Amy collected small crystal samples that had broken off during Zarathek's attacks. "I need to get these back to the ship for analysis. Maybe we can find a weakness." Zarathek watched them work and made questioning sounds. Lisa's equipment translated. "Little ones, can you help? Are you strong enough?" Time grows short. Jake looked up at the enormous dragon. Her golden eyes showed desperation, but also hope. Someone had finally answered her distress call. Someone was here to help, even if they were tiny compared to her. "We'll try," Jake said loudly, knowing Zarathek couldn't understand his words, but hoping she would understand his tone. "We'll find a way. Duh." The dragon's massive head came down close to Jake. She made a sound that was almost like a whisper, and warm air from her breath surrounded him. Then she gently touched his shoulder with the tip of one claw. The touch was careful, like she was afraid she might hurt him. "She's saying thank you," Lisa said, tears in her eyes. "She's been alone for so long." They spent the rest of the day studying the crystal cocoons while Zarathek watched. Amy collected samples and took readings. Lisa worked on improving their translation system. Jake examined the battle damage and tried to understand what they were fighting. When the sun began to set, Zarathek made sounds that clearly meant they should return to the ship. She had learned that the small humans needed rest and food and couldn't survive the cold night like she could. Back on the Ranger, Amy worked in her lab while Jake called a meeting with his senior officers. Chief Engineer Tony Blake joined them, along with Communications Officer Kelly Davis and Marine Sergeant Karen Stone. "All right, people," Jake said. "We've got 12 young dragons trapped by crystal parasites that have adapted to resist everything their mother can throw at them. These aren't ordinary crystals. They're alive, they're intelligent, and they get stronger every time someone attacks them." Amy displayed her analysis on the main screen. The Valinari parasites are silicon-based life forms. They create these crystal shells by converting matter around them. The shells are nearly indestructible. They can withstand temperatures of over 3,000 degrees, kinetic impacts that would destroy our ship, and energy weapons that could level a city. Tony Blake studied the readings. "How are they so tough?" "They adapt," Amy continued. "Every time Zarathek attacked with fire, the crystals became more heat-resistant. When she tried to break them with her claws, they became harder. When she used what I think was some kind of energy breath, they learn to absorb that type of energy and use it to grow stronger. What about the young dragons inside? Kelly asked. Still alive, but barely. The parasites are feeding on their life energy very slowly. At the current rate, I estimate they have maybe 2 weeks before the dragons are too weak to survive. Sergeant Stone had been quiet during the briefing. She was their tactical expert and always thought about fighting and winning. So we need to find a way to attack these things that the mother dragon hasn't tried yet. Exactly, Jake said. The question is, what can we do that a creature with the power of a small star can't do? Tony leaned back in his chair. Maybe that's the problem. Zarathic has been using brute force. Fire, claws, energy attacks. All direct, powerful methods. And the parasites adapt to direct attacks, Amy added. They've never encountered human technology or human thinking. Jake felt the beginning of an idea forming in his mind. We don't attack them directly? What if we use something subtle, something they won't recognize as an attack until it's too late? Like what? Kelly asked. Tony was already thinking like an engineer. Resonance. Sound waves. Vibrations. The crystals have a mathematical structure, right? That means they have natural frequencies that could cause them to vibrate apart from the inside? Amy nodded excitedly. The parasites might not recognize sound waves as an attack. They've adapted to heat, impact, and energy, but maybe not to harmonic disruption. Can we generate the right frequencies? Jake asked. We'd need to study the crystal. Structured more carefully, Tony said. And we'd need a way to deliver the sound waves directly to each cocoon. Sergeant Stone spoke up. What about using multiple small sources instead of one big one? Swarm tactics. Even if the parasites figure out what we're doing, they can't adapt. 24 different approaches at the same time? Jake looked around the table at his crew. They were talking about attacking parasites that had defeated a creature with the power of ancient gods. But for the first time since they had received Zarathic's distress signal, he felt hope. All right, people. We have 2 weeks to save 12 young dragons using technology and tactics their species has never seen before. Tony, I want you to design resonance generators. Amy, I need you to find the exact frequencies that will disrupt those crystals. Karen, start thinking about deployment strategies. As his crew scattered to begin their work, Jake looked out the window toward the crystal hillside. Somewhere in the darkness, Zarathic was keeping watch over her trapped children, as she had every night for 6 months. Tomorrow, they would begin the most important fight of their lives. The next morning, Captain Jake Morrison woke up to find Dr. Amy Rodriguez already in her lab. She'd been working all night, her hair messy and her eyes red from staring at computer screens. Empty coffee cups covered her desk. Amy, when did you last sleep? Jake asked. Sleep is for people who aren't trying to save baby dragons, Amy replied without looking up from her microscope. Captain, I think I found something. The Valenary parasites are incredible, but they have a weakness. Jake moved closer to see what she was studying. On the screen, he could see the crystal structure magnified thousands of times. It looked like a beautiful, complex web of connected shapes. The crystals grow in mathematical patterns, Amy explained. Perfect mathematical patterns. That's what makes them so strong, but it's also what makes them vulnerable. Every perfect structure has natural frequencies that can make it fall apart. Like how opera singers can break wine glasses with their voices? Exactly, but much more complex. These crystals have multiple harmonic frequencies. If we can hit the right combination of sound waves at the same time, we can make them shake themselves apart from the inside. Chief Engineer Tony Blake entered the lab carrying a tablet full of designs. He looked as tired as Amy, but just as excited. I've been working on the resonance generators, small ones, like Sergeant Stone suggested. We can make them the size of tennis balls and program each one with different frequencies. Amy and Tony worked together at the computer, combining her frequency calculations with his engineering designs. Jake watched as they created something that had never existed before. A weapon designed specifically to fight adaptive crystal parasites. How many generators do we need? Jake asked. For 12 cocoons? I'd say at least 20 generators per cocoon, Tony replied. That's 240 small machines, each one producing different sound waves. The parasites won't be able to adapt to all of them at once. How long to build them? Ow. Tony looked at his calculations. If we convert our entire manufacturing system and work around the clock, maybe 4 days, 5 at the most. Jake felt time pressing down on him like a weight. The young dragons were getting weaker every day. Do it. Convert everything we can. Spare Lieutenant Lisa Carter came into the lab carrying her communication equipment. Captain Zarathic is asking questions. She wants to know what we're doing. She can see the activity around our ship. Jake thought about how to explain their plan to a creature that had lived for thousands of years but had never seen human technology. Tell her we're making small singing stones, stones that will sing the crystal killers to death. Lisa worked with her translation equipment, converting Jake's words into mathematical patterns that Zarathic could understand. A few minutes later, she received a response. She says dragons also sing, but their songs didn't work against the crystals. She wants to know how our singing stones are different. Amy looked up from her work. Tell her our stones sing in harmony. Many different songs. At the same time, all working together. The crystal killers have never heard harmony before. When Lisa translated this, they heard Zarathica's voice across the valley. It was the first sound they had heard from her that wasn't filled with sadness. It almost sounded like hope. For the next 4 days, the crew of the Ranger worked harder than they had ever worked before. Tony and his engineers converted their ship's manufacturing systems to produce resonance generators. Amy refined her frequency calculations, finding the exact sound waves that would destroy the crystals without harming the young dragons inside. Pilot Danny Walsh worked with Sergeant Karen Stone to plan how they would position the generators around each crystal cocoon. Danny's flying skills would be crucial for placing the devices precisely, while Karen's tactical knowledge would help them coordinate the attack. Communications. Officer Kelly Davis helped Lisa improve their translation system. They needed to work closely with Zarathic during the rescue attempt, and every misunderstanding could cost lives. On the 3rd day, Amy made an important discovery. Captain, the young dragons are getting weaker, but they're also doing something interesting. They're trying to communicate with each other through the crystal walls. What do you mean? They're making sounds? It's very quiet sounds, but I can detect them with our sensors. They're scared, but they're staying connected as a family. That might actually help us. How? If they're making sounds, they're creating vibrations. Inside the cocoons, when we start our resonance attack, their voices might help amplify the effect. It's like having allies inside the enemy's fortress. Jake felt a surge of hope. The young dragons weren't just victims waiting to be rescued. They were fighters, just like their mother. On the 4th day, the first batch of resonance generators was ready. Each device was small enough to hold in one hand, but Tony's readings showed they could produce incredibly complex sound waves. The generators looked simple, but they contained some of the most advanced technology humans had ever created. We need to test them, Tony said, but not on the cocoons. If we're wrong about the frequencies, we could make things worse. Amy had prepared for this. I found some natural crystal formations about 10 miles from here. Same basic structure as the valenary crystals, but not alive. We can test our generators there. Danny flew a small shuttle to the test site with Amy, Tony, and 20 generators. They placed the devices around a crystal formation about the size of a car. And activated them. The sound was unlike anything they had ever heard. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The air itself vibrated, and they could feel the sound waves in their bones. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, cracks appeared in the crystal. The cracks spread quickly, following the mathematical patterns Amy had predicted. Within 30 seconds, the entire formation collapsed into dust. It works, Tony said, his voice filled with amazement. It actually works. But Amy was studying her readings with concern. The sound waves are powerful, really powerful. We need to be careful about how close we get to the cocoons during the attack. These frequencies could be dangerous to humans. 2. They returned to the ship to make final preparations. By evening, all 240 generators were ready. Each one was programmed with specific frequencies and timing sequences. The attack would be coordinated down to the millisecond. Jake called his crew together for a final briefing. Tomorrow morning, we attempt something that has never been tried before. We're going to fight adaptive parasites using sound waves and teamwork. The generators will do most of the work, but we need to be ready for anything. Sergeant Stone had prepared tactical plans for multiple scenarios. If the parasites adapt faster than we expect, we'll have backup frequency sets ready. If they try to fight back, we'll have defensive positions prepared. Pilot Walsh had mapped out flight paths for precise generator placement. I can put each device exactly where it needs to be, but the timing has to be perfect. Once we start, there's no going back. Amy reviewed the safety protocols. Everyone stays at least 500 meters away from the cocoons during the attack. The sound waves will be intense enough to cause permanent hearing damage or worse. Lisa checked their communication systems one more time. Zorathic understands the plan. She'll stay back during the attack, but she's ready to help her children as soon as they're free. As the sun set, Jake looked out toward the crystal hillside. Tomorrow, they would either save 12 young dragons or watch them die. There was no middle ground. That night, Zorathic sang. It was the first time she had sung since her children were taken. Her voice carried across the valley, deep and beautiful and full of hope. The crew of the Ranger listened to her song and felt their courage grow. They were ready to fight for someone else's children. They were ready to show the universe what humans could do when innocent lives were at stake. In the morning, the real battle would begin. The sun was barely above the horizon when Captain Jake Morrison gave the order to begin. All teams moved to positions. Danny, start your approach run. Pilot Danny Walsh flew his shuttle in perfect formation with 2 cargo drones, each carrying dozens of resonance generators. His hands were steady on the controls, but Jake could see the tension in his shoulders. They all knew this was their only chance. Dr. Amy Rodriguez watched from the command post they had set up 500 meters. From the crystal cocoons, her equipment showed the life signs of the young dragons inside their crystal prisons. The readings were weaker than yesterday. Time was running out. First cocoon, generators in position, Danny reported over the radio. He had placed 20 small devices around the largest crystal formation, each one exactly where Amy's calculations said it needed to be. Chief. Engineer Tony Blake monitored the generator systems from his mobile control unit. All devices online and ready, frequencies locked and synchronized. Zorathic watched from a nearby hilltop, her massive form tense with hope and fear. Lieutenant Lisa Carter stayed near the dragon, ready to translate any important communications. The ancient mother had been silent since dawn, but her golden eyes never left the crystal cocoons that held her children. Second cocoon ready, Danny called out. Moving to position 3, Jake felt sweat on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Everything had to work perfectly. If even one part of their plan failed, the young dragons would die, and Zorathic would lose her family forever. All cocoons have generators in place, Danny announced 15 minutes later. I'm returning to safe distance. Tony checked his readings one more time. All systems show green. 240 generators ready. To activate on your command, Captain? Jake took a deep breath. Amy, what are the life signs showing? The young dragons are still alive, but barely. Captain, if we're going to do this, it has to be now. All teams, prepare for activation. On my mark? Jake paused, thinking about the months of work that had led to this moment. Mark, activate. All generators. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The air around the crystal cocoons began to vibrate in ways that human eyes could see. Sound waves crossed and recrossed, creating patterns of distortion that made the landscape look like it was underwater. The noise was unlike anything they had ever heard. It wasn't loud in the normal sense, but it seemed to come from inside their bodies. Even at 500 meters away, the crew felt the vibrations in their bones and teeth. Generators operating at full power, Tony reported, shouting to be heard. Over the strange harmonics, all frequencies synchronized and stable. Amy watched her scanners with growing excitement. I'm seeing cracks in the crystal structures. Small ones, but they're spreading along the mathematical fault lines exactly like I predicted. The Valinary parasites were not giving up without a fight. The crystals began to change, adapting to the sound waves, just as they had adapted to Xerithic attacks. Parts of the crystal formations became thicker and denser, trying to resist the harmonic assault. "They're adapting," Amy called out, "but not fast enough. We're using too many different frequencies at once." Then something unexpected happened. The crystals began to glow brighter, and energy started arcing between the different cocoons. Parasites were trying to connect with each other, sharing their adaptive knowledge to fight the human attack. "Tony, are you seeing this?" Jake asked. "Yeah, and it's not good. If they link up, they might be able to adapt to all our frequencies." At once, Sergeant Karen Stone had been watching the battle through binoculars. She was their tactical expert, and she could see what the others might miss. "Captain, look at the pattern of those energy arcs. They're not random. Parasites are creating a network, but they're leaving weak points." "What kind of weak points?" "Connections between cocoons. The energy arcs are carrying information, but they're also carrying our sound waves. If we can overload those connections, we might be able to disrupt their entire network." Tony understood immediately. "I can redirect some of our generators to target the connection points. It'll reduce the power hitting each individual cocoon, but it might stop them from working together." "Do it," Jake ordered. Tony's fingers flew over his controls, reprogramming dozens of generators to focus on the energy arcs between cocoons. The sound patterns changed, becoming even more complex and chaotic. The effect was dramatic. The energy arcs between cocoons began to flicker and spark. The parasite's network was being disrupted by the very connections they had created to defend themselves. "It's working!" Amy shouted. "The cracks are spreading faster now. The parasites can't coordinate their adaptations." But the Valinari had one more trick. The crystals suddenly launched sharp spears of crystal material toward the human positions. The spears moved fast, whistling through the air like deadly arrows. "Take cover!" Karin yelled, diving behind a boulder. Crystal spears smashed into rocks and dirt all around their command post. Danny's voice came over the radio from his shuttle. "I'm taking defensive fire. These things are shooting at me." "Stay mobile," Jake ordered. "Don't let them get a lock." On your position, the battle became more intense. Crystal spears filled the air while sound waves tore at the cocoons. Parasites were fighting desperately, using every adaptation they had learned from months of battle with Xerithic. Then, Amy noticed something wonderful. "Captain, the young dragons are helping. They're making sounds inside their cocoons, and the vibrations are amplifying our generators." Through the chaos of battle, they could hear it. 12 young voices, weak but determined, singing from inside their crystal prisons. The baby dragons were adding their own harmonic frequencies to the human attack. Xerithic heard her children's voices and roared with joy and rage. She spread her massive wings and launched herself into the air, flying toward the crystal formations. "Lisa, tell her to stay back," Jake called out. "She'd disrupt our sound waves." But Lisa was listening to Xerithic's response. "She says she won't interfere with our attack, but she won't let her children fight alone anymore." The ancient dragon flew in wide circles around the battlefield, staying clear of the sound waves, but adding her own voice to her children's song. Her deep, powerful voice created bass harmonics that made the entire valley vibrate. The combination was devastating to the parasites. Human technology, young dragon voices, and ancient dragon power working together created sound patterns that the Valinari had never encountered and couldn't adapt to fast enough. "Major structural failure in cocoon number 7, Amy reported. "The crystal is breaking apart." They watched as the first cocoon cracked like an eggshell. Crystal pieces fell away, revealing a young dragon about the size of a large truck. Scales were golden like its mother's eyes, and it was moving weakly, but definitely alive. "One down, 11 to go," Tony said, adjusting his generators to account for the changing harmonic environment. The freed young dragon tried to stand, but was too weak from months of energy drain. It made soft sounds toward its mother, who answered with gentle rumbles of encouragement while continuing to fly her protective circles. "Cocoons 4 and 9 are showing critical damage," Amy announced. "They'll break open within minutes." But the parasites weren't finished. As their crystal formations failed, they began to merge together, creating larger, more aggressive structures. Instead of 12 separate cocoons, they were forming into 3 massive crystal fortresses. They're changing tactics, Karen observed, concentrating their strength. The merged crystal structures were harder to crack, but they also had a weakness. By combining, the parasites had put all their eggs in 3 baskets instead of 12. Tony, can you concentrate our generators on the 3 main structures? Already working on it, Tony replied. Redirecting all available units now. The sound waves focused on the 3 crystal fortresses with devastating effect. Without the ability to spread their defenses across 12 separate structures, the parasites couldn't adapt fast enough to the concentrated harmonic assault. Within 10 minutes, all 3 fortresses began to collapse. Young dragons emerged from the falling crystals, weak and confused but alive. Their golden scales caught the morning sunlight as they called out to their mother with voices like musical bells. Zarathic landed among her freed children, her massive form moving with surprising gentleness as she checked each one for injuries. Her joy was so powerful that the humans could feel it from hundreds of meters away. All generators shutting down, Tony announced. Mission accomplished. But their celebration was cut short. The dying parasites had one final attack. Crystal debris, launched into the air like shrapnel, flying in all directions with deadly speed. Crystal shards flew through the air like deadly rain. Captain Jake Morrison dove behind a rock as pieces of sharp crystals smashed into the ground where he had been standing. The dying Valenary parasites were using their last energy to attack. Everything around them. Everyone take cover. Sergeant Karen Stone shouted over the sound of crystal hitting metal and stone. A piece the size of a dinner plate struck the side of their command post and shattered into smaller. Rap. Dr. Amy Rodriguez pulled her equipment behind a boulder and checked her scanner readings. The parasites are burning out their remaining energy in this attack. They can't keep it up for long. Chief Engineer Tony Blake was trying to protect his generator control unit when a crystal shard cut across his arm. Blood soaked through his shirt, but he kept working to shut down the resonance devices safely. Captain, some of the generators are being damaged. If they overload, they could create a feedback loop. Do whatever you need to do, Jake called. Back, pressing himself against a rock face as more crystal debris whistled overhead. The attack was intense, but brief. Within 2 minutes, the crystal storm ended as the last of the parasites used up their energy and died. And strange quiet fell over the battlefield, broken only by the sound of small crystal pieces still falling like deadly snow. Jake carefully looked around his cover. The area around the former crystal cocoons looked like a war zone. Broken crystal covered the ground in every direction. Several of their resonance generators had been destroyed, but 12 young dragons were free. The baby dragons huddled close to their mother, making soft musical sounds as Zarathic checked each one for injuries. Even weakened from months of energy drain, they were beautiful creatures. Their golden scales sparkled in the sunlight, and their eyes showed the same ancient intelligence as their mother. Lieutenant Lisa Carter emerged from behind her own shelter and activated her communication equipment. Zarathic is thanking us, she translated. She says the debt can never be repaid. Jake walked slowly toward the dragon family, careful not to step on the sharp crystal fragments scattered everywhere. As he got closer, he could see that some of the young dragons were injured. Crystal shards had cut their scales during the final attack. Amy, bring your medical kit, Jake called. Dr. Rodriguez joined Jake near the dragons, her medical scanner showing the injuries. Nothing life-threatening, but they need treatment. The problem is, I don't know anything about dragon medicine. Zarathic watched Amy approach her children and made questioning sounds. Lisa translated from her position nearby. She's asking, if you can help heal them? She trusts you because you saved them. Amy looked up at the enormous mother dragon and nodded. I'll do my best. Working with creatures the size of trucks was unlike anything Amy had ever done, but the young dragons seemed to understand she was trying to help. They held still while she cleaned their wounds and applied bandages that looked tiny against their massive forms. While Amy worked, Tony and Danny Walsh began collecting the undamaged resonance generators. Many had been destroyed in the crystal storm, but enough survived to prove that human technology could work miracles when properly applied. Captain Tony said as he examined one of the devices, "These generators performed better than I ever hoped. We should send the data back to Earth. This technology could help humans fight other energy-based threats." Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on something else. The youngest of the baby dragons, barely the size of a car, had approached him while Amy was treating its siblings. It made soft sounds and gently touched Jake's hand with the tip of its snout. "What's it doing?" Jake asked Lisa. Lisa consulted her translation equipment and smiled. "It's saying thank you, and it's asking if you want to be friends." Jake felt tears in his eyes as he carefully touched the young dragon's warm scales. "Tell it that I would be honored to be its friend." The baby dragon made happy sounds and curled up near Jake like a giant golden cat. Despite everything they had been through, these creatures still trusted the humans who had risked their lives to save them. Zarathik watched this interaction and made sounds that Lisa translated as deep approval. "She says humans have good hearts. She says her family will remember this forever." As the day continued, something remarkable happened. The dragons began to recover their strength quickly now that the parasites were no longer draining their energy. The young ones started to play, chasing each other around the valley while their mother watched with obvious joy. But Jake was worried about practical matters. "Amy, how long before they're strong enough to take care of themselves?" "Dragon physiology is amazing," Amy replied, watching her scanner readings with fascination. "They're healing incredibly fast. I'd say another day or two, and they'll be completely recovered." That evening, as the crew prepared to return to their ship, Zarathik approached Jake with careful steps. Massive head came down to his level, and she made a series of complex sounds. Lisa worked to translate the message. "She's making an offer, Captain. She says dragons can travel between stars without ships. She can carry us anywhere we want to go." Jake looked up at the ancient creature who had become their friend. "Tell her we appreciate the offer, but we have our own ship." But Zarathik made more sounds, and Lisa's expression became serious. "She's not just offering transportation, Captain. She's offering alliance. She says humans and dragons should work together. She wants to know if we would consider staying here and helping her people learn about our technology." Jake felt the weight of a decision that would change everything. Earth Command had sent them to explore and survey, not to form permanent alliances with alien species. But looking at Zarathik and her children, he knew this was bigger than any mission orders. "Tell her we need to contact our government and explain what happened here. But tell her that personally, I think humans and dragons, working together, could accomplish amazing things." Over the next several days, Jake sent long reports back to Earth Command. He explained about the Valenary threat, the rescue mission, and Zarathik's offer of alliance. He recommended that Earth send a diplomatic team to begin formal negotiations with the dragon people. While they waited for Earth's response, the crew of the Ranger learned more about their new friends. Zarathik showed them ancient dragon technology that could grow living cities from special crystals. The young dragons demonstrated their ability to generate various types of energy, from heat and light to complex electromagnetic fields. "Captain," Amy said one morning, "I think we're looking at a partnership that could advance both our species by centuries. Dragons have power and longevity. Humans have creativity and adaptability. Together, we could explore the galaxy like no one ever has before." Tony was equally excited about the technological possibilities. Their energy generation abilities combined with our engineering could create ships that don't need fuel. We could travel farther and faster than anyone thought possible. The response from Earth Command finally arrived 2 weeks later. Jake read the message with growing satisfaction. Earth was sending a full diplomatic mission to negotiate a formal alliance. The Ranger crew was ordered to remain and assist with first contact protocols. But the message also contained an offer that surprised everyone. Earth Command wanted to establish a permanent research station on the Dragon planet. With volunteers from both species working together on joint projects, Jake called his crew together to discuss the offer. "They're asking for volunteers to stay here permanently. This would mean giving up our lives on Earth to help build something completely new. One by one, each crew member volunteered to stay. Amy wanted to study dragon biology and share human medical knowledge. Tony was excited about combining human and dragon technology. Lisa looked forward to developing better communication between the species. Danny wanted to learn how dragons flew through space. Karen saw the potential for a new kind of security force that could protect both species. Jake made his own decision. Isili. Then it settled. We're not just explorers anymore. We're pioneers. The ceremony 3 months later was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humans and dragons gathered in the valley where the crystal battle had taken place. Leaders from Earth stood next to ancient dragon elders as they signed the first interspecies alliance treaty in human history. Jake watched as his crew worked alongside their dragon partners on the construction of New Harmony Station, the first joint human-dragon research facility. Children from the first families to arrive on the colony ship played with young dragons in gardens that bloomed with both earth flowers and dragon crystal trees. Zarothic approached Jake as he watched the construction work. Through their improved translation systems, she spoke to him in words that sounded almost human. "Jake, friend," she said carefully. "Dragon children safe because humans came.
Oh.
Dragon children and human children play together. This is good future." Jake smiled as he watched a human child and a baby dragon work together to plant a tree that would grow to be a living bridge between their two civilizations. "Yes, Zarethek," he replied. "This is a very good future." The galaxy had become a little smaller and much more interesting.